What if I told you that the Magna Carta, the Declaration of Independence, and Chaucer's Canterbury Tales were all written with the same ingredient, found growing on oak trees? Or that producing a single medieval Bible required the skins of over 200 sheep? Welcome to the hidden world of paleography, the science of ancient writing. In this first video, we'll explore what paleography actually is and take a quick tour through all the fascinating materials that made ancient writing possible. From wax tablets to papyrus, parchment, paper, ink, and quills. We'll be focusing on European paleography, the materials and tools used in the Western world. Other cultures developed their own fascinating writing traditions, but that's a story for another time. Each of these materials deserves its own deep dive, so in future videos, we'll explore them in more detail. And later in this series, we'll also look at how writing itself evolved over the centuries. But for now, let's start with the basics. Today, we're not going to talk about what ancient people wrote, but how they wrote it. The word paleography comes from ancient Greek, paleos meaning old and graphein meaning to write. So paleography is literally the study of old writing. Today, paleography is essential for historians, archivists, and anyone trying to unlock the secrets of the past. Without it, we couldn't read ancient wills, medieval court records, or Renaissance letters. But it's so much more than just reading old documents. Paleographers are like detectives of the written word. They analyze the shapes of letters, the way ink flows, the materials used, all to answer crucial questions. When was this document written? Where was it written? Is it authentic or a forgery? One important distinction. Paleography focuses on writing on soft materials, papyrus, parchment, paper. If you're studying inscriptions carved into stone or metal, that's a different discipline called epigraphy. Paleography is about ink on page, not chisel on rock. But here's what most people don't realize. To truly understand old writing, you need to understand the materials. The surfaces people wrote on, the inks they used, the tools they held in their hands. Because these materials didn't just carry the words, they shaped them. Let's start with the oldest reusable writing surface, the wax tablet. Ancient Greeks and Romans used wooden boards covered with a layer of wax. They wrote by scratching letters into the wax with a pointed stylus. And here's the clever part, the other end of the stylus was flat, so you could smooth out the wax and write again. It was basically the ancient version of an Etch-a-Sketch. Wax tablets were perfect for everyday notes, school exercises, and drafts. They were cheap and endlessly reusable. Students practiced their letters on them. Merchants kept accounts. Even official documents were sometimes written on wax before being copied onto something more permanent. Some wax tablets have survived for over 2,000 years, and we can still read the scratches in the wax. Before paper, there was papyrus, and it dominated the ancient Mediterranean for thousands of years. Papyrus was made from a reed plant that grew along the Nile River in Egypt. Workers would slice the stem into thin strips, lay them in 2 layers crossing each other, and press them together. The plant's natural juices acted as glue. The ancient Egyptians were making papyrus as early as 3000 BC. The entire administration of the Roman Empire ran on papyrus. But papyrus had problems. It was fragile and didn't survive well in damp climates. And you couldn't fold it without cracking it, so papyrus was usually rolled into scrolls rather than bound into books. When papyrus supplies became unreliable, the ancient world needed an alternative. And that's where parchment comes in. Parchment is made from animal skins, but it's not as simple as just skinning an animal and writing on it. Making parchment was an art that took weeks of skilled labor. First, the skin, usually from sheep, goats, or calves, was soaked in a lime solution for several days. This loosened the hair and fat. Then came the stretching. The skin was pulled tight on a wooden frame, scraped with a curved knife called a lunellum, wetted and dried repeatedly. This aligned the collagen fibers, creating that smooth, durable surface we see in medieval manuscripts. Now, there's a distinction you should know. Parchment is the general term, but vellum refers specifically to the finest quality, made from the skins of young animals, especially calves. It was reserved for the most precious manuscripts. Think about this. A complete medieval Bible required approximately 200 sheepskins. Books weren't just expensive, they were a massive investment of resources. Here's something that might blow your mind. Medieval people recycled their writing materials. Because parchment was so expensive, scribes often took old manuscripts, scraped off or washed away the existing text using milk and oat bran, and wrote something new on top. These recycled manuscripts are called palimpsests, from the Greek meaning scraped again. For centuries, that erased text was thought to be lost forever. But modern technology has changed everything. Using ultraviolet light and X-ray imaging, scientists can now read the ghostly traces of text that were scraped away 1,000 years ago. The most famous example? The Archimedes palimpsest. In the 13th century, a monk scraped away a 10th century copy of mathematical works by Archimedes and wrote a prayer book over it. Paper changed everything, but it took over 1,000 years to reach Europe from its birthplace. Paper was invented in China around 105 AD. The court official Kai Lun is credited with refining the process, mixing mulberry bark, hemp, and rags with water, mashing it into pulp, pressing out the liquid, and letting it dry. For centuries, the Chinese kept this technology secret. But in 751 AD, after the Battle of Talas, Arab forces captured Chinese papermakers. The secret was out. Baghdad became a major paper production center. During the Islamic Golden Age, vast libraries were built, some holding collections larger than anything in Europe at the time. Paper slowly made its way westward, to Egypt, then to Spain by the 11th century, and to Italy by the 12th century. Now let's talk about what might be the most incredible material of all, medieval ink. If you've ever walked through an oak forest, you might have noticed strange round growths on the leaves and twigs. These are called oak galls, and they're the key ingredient in the ink that was used to write most of the Western world's important documents for over 1,000 years. Here's how it works. A tiny gall wasp injects its egg into an oak leaf. The tree, trying to protect itself, produces tannic acid around the developing larva, creating these hard, round growths. Medieval scribes would collect these galls, crush them, and soak them in water. This released the tannins. Then they added iron sulfate, known in medieval times as copperas. The chemical reaction is almost magical. The moment iron meets the tannins, the liquid turns a deep, permanent black. Finally, they added gum arabic, dried sap from the acacia tree, to help the ink flow smoothly. But here's the dark side. Iron gall ink is slightly acidic. Over centuries, poorly made ink can literally eat through the parchment. Some medieval documents have text that has burned holes right through the page. It's a race against time for conservators. Now you have your writing surface and your ink. But how do you actually get the ink onto the page? For over 1,000 years, from the 6th century until the 1800s, the answer was the quill pen. The best quills came from the primary flight feathers of geese or swans. But forget those fluffy, feathery quills you see in movies. Real scribes trimmed off all the barbs and used sleek, practical tools that looked more like simple sticks. The feathers had to be cured first, hardened in hot sand, because fresh feathers are too soft. Then the tip was cut into a nib using a specialized knife. That's actually where we get the term penknife. So, to wrap up our journey through the materials of ancient writing, today we type millions of words without thinking about the materials involved. But for most of human history, every written word was a small miracle of craft, chemistry, and biology. Next time you see an ancient manuscript, remember, you're not just looking at words on a page. You're looking at sheep and geese and oak trees, at iron and acacia sap, at countless hours of skilled labor. That's the secret science of ancient books. And that is paleography. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, please give this video a like. It really helps more history lovers find it. And if you want to explore more secrets of ancient writing with me, hit that subscribe button. Drop me a comment below. Let me know what you enjoyed most and what you'd like to see in future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.